Today, I want to introduce you to John Dobelbower. We have from PIRTEK. This is an amazing concept for the right person, and I just want to share this with you. John, can you go ahead and kind of explain why you picked PIRTEK and maybe a little bit of your background in the franchise industry?
Yeah, sure. So I've been somewhat of a serial entrepreneur myself. Bought and sold a lot of different businesses over time, and so entrepreneurship is kind of near and dear to my heart. And I'm like everybody else, right? I grew up thinking I can't wait to get in the hydraulic and industrial hose business. No, I mean, look, the reality is anything that moves up, down, left, or right is typically powered by hydraulics. Now, what most people think of are the yellow machines on the side of the road during the morning commute, right? Think excavators, bulldozers, things like that. They're all powered by hydraulics. And so we're the guys that come out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And most importantly, within 1 hour to replace those hydraulic hoses whenever they fail, really with the intent to keep our business customers up and operational. So by its very nature, that means that this is a B2B business. And there's a lot to love about B2B opportunities, right? You have national account opportunities. You have a relatively low customer base, but you can get into pretty high revenue figures where people aren't overly price sensitive. And you can do that with a really recession-resistant brand. And so when you start looking at all the different things that go into all of that, right, it's less about the widget, it's more about the opportunity. That's what drew me personally to PIRTEK.
Well, one of the things that I like about this is that it is an emergency business. So people don't haggle. They need this and they need it now. And the commitment from the customer is amazing, because my family, we owned a pasta factory. So we'd have these huge lines. And once you start running that dough through that boiling water and through the freezer tunnels, if you have to shut down even for 5 minutes, it is a big deal. So if you have hydraulic lines, they're supposed to be flipping and moving things. When that breaks, you don't want to have somebody take it off, bring it in, get it ordered, get it a week from now, reinstall it. Like, that is catastrophic financially to that business owner. I know, because that's what we went through. And so having somebody that can come out in an hour, fix it, is incredible. Before we go any further, give me an idea of what we can talk about with maybe some of the potential of the business, just so that people get an idea. Because it's an emergency need, but what's the potential?
Yeah, so what blew my mind, Lance, is just the breadth of the industry itself, right? I said earlier, anything that moves up, down, left, or right. Well, listen, you go get a massage this afternoon, you sit on a massage table, guess what? It goes up and down. It's powered by hydraulics, right? You go to the dentist, you sit in the dental chair, it goes up and down. It's also powered by hydraulics. So a lot of people think heavy equipment. A lot of people think manufacturing, like the pasta factory. A lot of people have sort of preconceived notions, but the reality is the market is massive. If you go look in the United States, it's about a $1.8 billion business, just hydraulic hoses. You add industrial hoses on top of it, the market about doubles, right? From 1.8 to 3.6 billion. We're by far the largest in the space. And I think the reason that we are is because we have the ability to go out and replace those hoses nonstop. So the biggest challenge that I have is, people don't understand how to spell hydraulic, much less know how all of it works. But the reality is you don't need to know that. All you need to know is that hydraulic hoses are everywhere around you. They will fail. And we're the guys that go out and replace those hoses right there on site.
And this is not one of those businesses where I'm the owner. I have to understand hydraulic hoses. I might be hiring a tech to do that for me. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that you know nothing about the technical aspects of the business, because the reality is we don't want our owners out in a van. We don't want them physically making these hoses. But honestly, it's not overly complicated for the technicians either. What you need to know is that righty is tighty and lefty is loosey. And the reason I say that is because we actually do all the in-house training for the technicians for the life of the franchise. You go and you hire someone 10 years from now as a technician, we will actually do the training on your behalf. So I don't want the franchise owners to get caught up in the technical aspects of the business. I want them to focus on actually running a business, being strong leaders, lead, inspire, motivate, manage, encourage team members, right? Be the face of the organization. Those are the things that are really going to drive scale in this business. It has much less to do with the technical aspects.
And what would be the the timeline that it typically takes an owner to go through training, be up and running, and be, get customers. Because I know you have the two models. You have like your tier 1 and your tier 2, and one of them is just having a couple vehicles that have the 1.25 inch and smaller hoses, and then the other locations where you can do up to 2 inches, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. So there are two different ways to enter, but the reality is you're going to scale from the day you're awarded a franchise to the day you open. It's going to be about 120 days. So it's a relatively quick startup, even if you had that brick and mortar component. And you're right? You have the ability to do the larger hose work with the brick and mortar component. But the thing I really like about it is the reality is every customer in the market is already getting their hydraulic hoses replaced, right? We revolutionized the business of coming out to you to replace it right there on site. It doesn't mean that it's not already happening in the market. Well, you're going to have several customers that are used to taking off the hose, taking it into a shop, waiting 4 or 5 hours or 4 or 5 days, right, to get the right fitting. We still want to capture that market. So that's why we have the over-the-counter offering, that and the larger hose work, which tend to be the most profitable hoses. Allow our owners to scale, but it's pretty quick, right? From the day you're awarded to the day you open, about 120 days.
And I can even see, I just think about all these tractors and combines and how much of ag would be there.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere, right? So, Lance, you drive a car?
I do.
Right,
Still
does the car have brakes?
It does.
Guess what? You're familiar with hydraulic hose systems, right? Like, hydraulics are literally everywhere, whether it's a combine, whether it's agricultural, whether it's military applications. We have one franchise owner that runs a system that we have called PIRTEK Defense, right? Does a bunch of Coast Guard work, Navy work. The amount of opportunity is relatively endless, right? And we're in a relatively niche business. So someone told me a long time ago that the riches are in the niches. I never really understood that until I got to PIRTEK. Realized that, the competition out in the space, right? It's not like personal injury attorney or landscaper, right? I get on Google, I have to compete with 7,000 other people. Here, it's hydraulic hose replacement. I'm going to show up number one, right? And it's a very targeted need. You're not calling me because, you're shopping hydraulic hoses. You're calling me because at the end of the day, you have a problem. You need to get up and running as quickly as possible. Our marketing works really, really well for those sorts of things. And then you have the warm relationships with things like national accounts and all of that, which really just helps continue to scale. So,
well, and being it's a 24-hour business, I mean, you're going to have techs that are just going to be there, but also those people in the middle of the night, they're looking to talk to someone now. So and the great thing as an owner, I mean, you might be the backup if they don't pick up their phone for some reason, but you're not working 24 hours yourself.
Yeah, it's like anything. Franchising is built around systems, right? It's not built around the owner themselves. And so at the end of the day, if you build a business around the owner, it's only scalable to the extent of that owner. But our average franchise owner owns multiple locations. So by its default, right, you cannot do that sort of fully integrated in every aspect of the business. We don't want our owners to be fully integrated in the day-to-day. We want them working on the business and not in the business. Which, I know is a common catchphrase within franchising, but here it's true, right? It's like, hey, I want you to focus on being the leader that you always have been throughout your career. We see all these, corporate refugees. We have one of our most successful franchise owners was an Olympic bobsledder, right? Like had no sort of business experience or anything else, but what he did have is a track record of success. And here's what I know, Lance. If you surround already successful people with coaches and mentors and marketing and support and buying power and all these different things, they're not going to become less successful, right? They're going to become more successful. So that's kind of our secret sauce, if you will.
Yeah, it's definitely the habits and mindset is what makes someone successful, and just having a better system would be great. What can we talk about at this time of this recording when it comes to typical time to open, and then in any sort of give anybody any sort of ideas around sales or anything that would be in the FTD?
Yeah, sure. So our average location is pushing right in between 1.3, 1.4 million top line revenue. And again, that's per unit. Average owner owns multiple units. What you'll see in our item 19 is the average mature unit is doing a little over $1 million in gross profit. So these are highly lucrative businesses. And, time to scale is relatively quick, right? Because the reality is we already have, all these national account relationships. These are brands you would know, right? Think Sunbelt Rentals, United Rentals, Herc Equipment, H&A. There's 75 total, makes up about 21% of our overall business. That ends up being incredibly low-hanging fruit for our franchisees. And we actually come out to our franchise locations, right? So the way our training works is you come in, you spend 2 weeks with us, we do some technical training, we do some business training, but then we don't just kind of, release you out into the world, right? We actually come out to you for 2 weeks and we physically make these connections with the national accounts in the market. So we say, hey, United, this is our new franchise owner. Let me make an introduction, right? That helps our franchisees get off to a fast start. And so we've seen franchise owners scale pretty quickly.
And, you talked about 120 days. I was just trying to think about customer acquisition, because that's the biggest thing is okay, I like the business. I see how it works. I see the need. I get an idea of how much it's producing, but how am I going to find these customers? Now, it's emergency service, so they're just looking for you, but what would be a good understanding of the customer acquisition strategy so people can know I'm not going to open this and not have business?
Yeah, sure. So it's multifaceted like anything. I mean, I spoke a little bit earlier about the SEO optimization, pay-per-click optimization. We do all that on behalf of our franchisees, right? So the good news is marketing changes every single day, which means it's really hard to keep up with. But we have all these people on staff where it's their job to keep up with, hey, how do I best market a hydraulic hose replacement franchise, right? We implement those, right? We do the national accounts. We do all these sort of pre-market, pre-sell opportunities to go and develop those relationships. Because the reality is the first time you walk into a customer, it's very unlikely that they're going to have a broken hydraulic hose because they can't afford the downtime, right? So really, it's not even a true sales call. It's more about going through building a relationship. You're the guy that shows up with donuts and breakfast tacos with a PIRTEK hat, and you build a relationship with these construction companies, right? With these manufacturers. Once they have a need for you, they will call you. And then statistically, 87% of the time, they turn into a repeat customer. So it's really just, hey, let's get in the door. We are very, very good at getting in the door to the point where, we've done this in over 24 countries now at this point, well over 600 franchise locations. And so we have sort of a track record of success, largest in the space and all the, fun accolades that you hear. But at the end of the day, it's really because we go in and we solve the intimate problem that other business owner has, right? They cannot afford to be down. You've seen this on a construction site, right? How many times have you driven by, you see, 9 guys standing around, there's maybe 1 guy working, right? 9 guys standing around. Well, a lot of times that's because the machine itself is down, okay? If someone can come in and fix that machine, guess what ends up happening? All of a sudden, the highway contracts don't take, 30 years to complete. All the other solutions-oriented things that go into manufacturing processes, all of that can grind to a halt if you don't have all these pieces in place for hydraulic hose replacement. So it's not just emergency-driven. It's, hey, how do I put in preventive maintenance? How do I get out in front of these repairs before they even take place? We teach our franchise owners how to do all of that. And they've been very successful so far.
Yeah. If you can do the preventative maintenance, then you don't have the downtime and then you get all that work. So doing those regular servicings and checkouts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We actually built a cost of downtime calculator, right? And we show what the cost of downtime is for these individual customers. It's mind-boggling, right? It's like, yeah, why would I not turn around and pay PIRTEK to help avoid the cost of downtime, the payroll that's associated with it, the payroll burden, the opportunity cost? You start breaking it down, it ends up being thousands upon thousands of dollars an hour. Hey, we're the cheap alternative. And I say cheap relatively. The reality is we do very, very well from a margin perspective for our franchise owners because we're a needed service.
Right. And so thinking about, your territory, because that's the pond you fish in, give people an idea of what it is that makes up a territory.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things that we're going to look for. One, we have this whole idea of a 1-hour ETA, right? So can I get to this business customer within an hour? That sort of limits us geographically, right? The second thing we look for is the overall business count by SIC or NAICS codes. So we say, all right, how many businesses exist in this space that would have a need for hydraulic and industrial hose replacement services. And we come up with a certain number. And then the third thing that we look at is, okay, of all those businesses, how many of them are currently national accounts? And so we put all this into a, mapping software algorithm type thing, and it spits out all these different viable territories. Then once we find a very strong candidate in that market, we go through and further identify what their local knowledge looks like, right? So we can really tailor each one of those markets down to where we can find the most success.
Have you defined anything about the people who are most successful as PIRTEK owners, kind of like your owner avatar, or is it pretty diverse, or is it some things that stand out?
So I would say the thing that stands out the most is a proven track record of success, right? So like I had mentioned before, we have an Olympic bobsledder that, franchise owner with us, obviously successful in bobsledding, right? Not necessarily from a business mindset, but here you can't take that success out of somebody. And so the reality is if you've had success in whatever it is that you've been doing, and then you formalize a system around that, you are going to become more successful. Now, the trends that I see the most are, hey, if you have B2B sales experience, that's fantastic because we're in a B2B business, right? It's sales driven, it's sales oriented. As long as I can get in the door the first time, 87% of the time they turn into a repeat customer. So how do I get in the door early, right? I think that's a fantastic skill set to have. But the reality is we have a bunch of franchise owners that are engineers, a bunch of franchise owners that are accountants that are not sort of naturally salespeople. They still have wild levels of success because they understand the business, they understand the nuances and everything that goes into it. So, yeah.
Well, one of the last questions I have for you is, what is a day in the life of a franchisee?
Man, so it depends, right? We have kind of two different models. So I would view an owner operator, hey, I'm going to be, shaking hands, kissing babies, doing that sort of thing, right? Face of the organization. And certainly we have franchise owners that launch that way and are wildly successful. We have what I like to call an engaged investor model as well. So, man, I'm not going to be the guy that runs the day-to-day operation of the business, but I do have the leadership capacity and the leadership skills to put together the right team and the capital and everything to make sure that they're funded correctly, right? And so I think it depends on who you ask. If you ask one of our engaged investors, he's keeping his full-time job. He's sort of managing the business, has a finger on the pulse of the business on a day-to-day basis, but he's certainly not in it day-to-day. Or you have someone that jumps, kind of 2 feet in right at the very beginning. Listen, it's like anything when you go start a business. That guy's going to wear a lot of hats at the very beginning. But anywhere where he's weak, that's where we're strong, right? If he's weak on bookkeeping, guess what? We're going to help him with the bookkeeping aspects. If he's weak on marketing, we have an entire team for marketing, right? So I think that's the beauty of just franchising in general is it allows you to scale business around systems and not around you, because ultimately you want whatever system that you're in to be duplicatable. And we've certainly seen that, right? We still have our very first franchise owner here in the United States. It's been 28 years now, still a franchise owner with us today. He has 9 locations now, right? You can't be in 9 places at once. So how did he do it? He built systems with our help and was able to scale a pretty tremendous business.
So when it comes to techs, because this is a business that relies on you having techs to do this, people probably have questions on, how do I find them? Are they going to be flaky and not show up? Because I have to rely on these people, Tell us about how you guys find, sort, retain these techs that are essential for this.
Yeah. So listen, the technicians are the frontline service worker. They are the lifeblood of your business. So it's vitally important to make sure that you have the right people. But the good news is you're not alone, right, in that challenge. There's a lot of different ways that we go about finding top quality people. I would say at the end of the day, what it's really about is being the type of owner that people want to work for and with. That's half the battle, right? If you're the type of person that people want to work for and with, and you're in an industry that people want to work in, all of a sudden finding incredible talent doesn't become that much of a challenge, right? So the second part of that, hey, how do I understand that this is the industry that I want to be in? Well, I always use this example, okay? If I went to the local Jiffy Lube, nothing wrong with it, but if I'm working at the local Jiffy Lube, I'm standing in an oil pit all day long. I have some mechanical experience, right? I understand how to change oil and do all that. But the reality is I'm standing in a pit and I'm making $17 an hour and I'm standing in the same place over and over and over again. Okay. Now a PIRTEK franchise owner comes up to you and he says, hey, listen, buddy, wouldn't you like to have your own van, have some autonomy? You have a different challenge every single day. And oh, by the way, you can make $80, $90, $100,000 a year on average because I can compensate my technicians very, very well, right? Wouldn't you rather go there? So the industry itself is solved, right? Because you have sort of this recession resistance where people aren't price sensitive. You have all these different tools and attributes. Really, the X factor is you, right? If you're the type of people that people want to work with and for, then ultimately you're going to be able to find success.
Right, because this equipment's always aging and breaking, and now it's just, finding the people to do it. And the customers, it's just too expensive to have it down. They need to fix it now. Kind of like I always looked at like things like tow trucks and stuff. Like you need it now, and you're not price shopping usually to get off the side of the road. So
yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was chatting with the franchise owner the other day, and he had an after hours call come in, not to him, right, to one of his technicians, and the technician kind of starts to give him the spiel. It's going to cost me X amount of dollars to even start up the van. And the guy cuts him off immediately, and he's like, listen, buddy, I don't think you understand. It's costing me $100,000 an hour to be down. Can you be here 15 minutes ago? Well, do you think that guy is price sensitive on how much the hose costs? No. He's price sensitive on the downtime that's associated. And, one of the things that comes up quite often is, all right, so you have these technicians, they're the lifeblood of the business. You have all these different concerns and everything wrapped up into them. And they're on call 24/7, man, are these guys going to get burnt out? What's that going to look like? The reality is our technicians fight over that because they're directly compensated with the amount of revenue that they bring in. And guess what the highest ticket jobs are, right? They're after hours. So our technicians love going out and doing these sort of challenging projects because ultimately they drive revenue, which goes directly into their pocket, which is how they make $80, $90, $100,000 a year. So it all sort of ties together.
right, yep. And then you feel like you're fixing something. There's a sense of accomplishment. Some people, if it's just repetitive, but here you took something that was broke and you fixed it, kind of got it back up and running. There is a good sense of accomplishment with that. Anything else that you think that we should bring up?
I think that the most important thing about understanding what a franchising or entrepreneurial journey should look like is at some point it goes from being from a place of success, right, to going to a place of significance. And here's what I mean by that, right? Most of the people that are watching this interview, they've already had some success in the past. We want to double down on that, right? We want to make sure that they continue to have that success. But ultimately, you want to get to that place of significance because it creates a ripple effect, right? If you can go through and input your value, right, into your employees, that's going to ripple out to your customers. It's going to ripple out to so many different people. And it's going to help you establish something that's more of a legacy instead of just a place of monetary gain. And you can make a lot of money while you do it, right? Which is a lot of fun.
All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks again for the time.